You've read the Building a StoryBrand book by Donald Miller. You've mapped out the 7 parts of the framework, but nothing is changing in your business. People still aren't finding you. Your email list growth is still the same size it's been for 3 months. And the people following you on Facebook and Instagram, they aren't your people. And your latest course launch, it only yielded a handful of sales at best. We've all been there. We've read the book and felt like we should be able to figure something out, but then we get stuck when nothing changes after implementing the framework. Does this mean that StoryBrand doesn't work? Not necessarily. Think about this. If all we needed were books to be successful, then everyone who read a business book would be profitable, right? Did the book leave you with questions along the way? Did you find yourself saying, yes, I get it, but what about? The secret behind unlocking the power of StoryBrand isn't something that you'll find in the book, but I'm going to spill the beans on the key today. And at the end of today's episode, as a StoryBrand Certified guide, I'm going to highlight for you which piece of the 7-part framework I think is the single most important part to nail so that your audience feels seen, heard, and understood.
Anyone can add a digital course to their business. So what sets the 6-figure course creators apart? You're about to find out. Welcome to the Digital Course Creator Podcast with Dr. Maura, a longtime entrepreneur now using her PhD in psychology to help you go from sticky notes to sales worth celebrating.
If you are new to StoryBrand, or maybe you've contemplated picking up the Building a StoryBrand book by Donald Miller, I'll just go ahead and tell you, it's a worthy investment. If you are watching the video version of this podcast on YouTube, you'll be able to see it on the bookshelf behind me. I regularly reach for it. I came to StoryBrand when I was trying to figure out my own messaging several years ago. I was new to this side of my business, and I couldn't quite get things figured out. Sound familiar? I think every entrepreneur experiences this at some point. After all, we all need help with our messaging to some degree. Now, StoryBrand really appealed to me because it has a 7-part framework that is really simple. It just makes sense. But this episode isn't about breaking down that framework. So if you are interested in learning more about StoryBrand framework, I would ask you to go check out episode 164 for an overview. Now, the simplicity of the 7-part framework makes my research brain really happy. I love when everything has a place and a time, and it just fits. But there was a moment when I realized that the book wasn't going to be enough to help me figure out my messaging, even though it's a super simple framework. Building a comprehensive messaging ecosystem is complicated. It requires a lot of different facets and strategies. To say we only need the book is like saying a sailor only needs a compass to cross the ocean. When in fact they need sonar, they need maps, they need a second set of eyes in the tricky passes, they need countless other tools that I don't know anything about to keep their ship, their vessel safe, right? In fact, one of my private clients came to me because they had read the Building a StoryBrand book and were kind of lost about how to implement everything effectively. It wasn't quite enough. Think about all of the people that joined Jeff Walker's product launch formula course, despite having read his book called Launch that goes through the exact same formula. If a book were enough to create a full messaging ecosystem, then authors wouldn't be sharing their information in other ways in addition to books. It would seem like if all we needed was the book to experience success, then we wouldn't need to have courses or communities or offer one-on-one training or coaching. Now, having read the book, I knew that I needed something more. And me, being me, I decided that becoming an expert in the framework was the way to go. So I became a StoryBrand Certified guide, and along the way, what happened is that I had access to the secret to making StoryBrand work in my business. In addition to discovering the secret to making StoryBrand effective in my business, I also uncovered the most important part of the StoryBrand framework, and I'm going to share that with you toward the end of today's episode. But enough suspense. What is the secret? to making StoryBrand work in your business. It is so simple that I felt like I deserved a duh, Maura, for this because it eluded me forever. A book will provide quality information as a starting point, but the real progress comes from the implementation with a second set of eyes. Now, before you worry that I am going to be pitching you something right now, I'm not. I'm sharing what I have found to be true time and again because I suffered for the first year and a half of my business without realizing what I'm about to talk to you about. When we are creating a messaging ecosystem that is magnetic, we are just too close to it to be objective. We see our words, our ideas differently because we have already internalized the importance of what we do. We are masters of our craft and we're ready to share that expertise with others. In other words, we automatically read between the lines. So I want you to imagine a child who's just learning to read. They sound out every letter, every syllable of every single word on the page, right? Whereas after they've been reading for a while, they can kind of skim a line, use context clues, and tell you what the sentence says pretty quickly. They made some assumptions, they filled in some blanks, and they read the sentence in one fell swoop. This same thing happens in our business. We are so used to what we offer, how we help, who we help, that our words might be missing the key components that someone new might need. We skim. Someone new to our business has to sound out every single letter, every single syllable of every single word. And if we don't have all of the words and all of the syllables there, they're going to be missing key parts. When a digital entrepreneur gets a second set of eyes on their messaging, someone who is familiar with their business, but not necessarily a member of their business, because again, we're looking for an unbiased opinion here, having that second set of eyes can open up the gaping holes that might exist, the syllables, the words that are missing. This is exactly what happened when I became a guide. During training, we got a lot of sets of eyes on our messaging and we got feedback. Each round of feedback uncovered more areas for improvement and clarity, ways to add things in to make it cohesive. The secret to magnetic messaging using the StoryBrand framework is to get feedback. And as I said earlier, there is one specific piece of the framework that you absolutely have to nail in order to make that magnetic messaging, make it nice and strong. And I'll share that with you in just a few moments. But first, let's talk about this week's action item, okay? If the secret to implementing StoryBrand effectively in your business is to get feedback, it seems fitting that this week's action item is to find someone to look at your messaging and identify not just what's working, but the holes that need to be filled in with more detail, more persuasive examples, and of course, some eyes to figure out if you have nailed the piece of the framework that will pull your potential client in. And don't worry, I'm going to share that with you as we wrap up the episode today. But first, what does asking for feedback look like? You could ask in a Facebook group, but we've all had that experience where we posted something and we just needed a simple answer. And we post, and almost immediately the regret sets in when we get 8 or 10 or 12 suggestions, and none of them are the things that you asked about. It's enough to make us pull our hair out. Isn't it better to get help that is tailored to your business and needs than to get 10 responses from people who may not know your perspective, your vision, or your needs? So what does that mean the solution is here? If you have a trusted advisor in your business, this is the time to reach out to them and ask for feedback on your messaging. It is uncomfortable. But oh my gosh, the best growth happens from those moments of discomfort. Give them specific questions to consider and items to review. Don't just say, hey, how does this sound? You can ask them, is this specific enough? Who do you think I'm talking to? How does this flow from this to that? If you do not have a trusted advisor, mentor, or coach, this week might be the time to consider that next step in your business. Because growth in your business is all about strategy. But finding the right strategy, kind of like the secret I shared today about making sure you get an unbiased set of eyes on your messaging for honest, critical feedback, it can be tough to find that right strategy on your own. You know that I'm openly sharing about my experiences in business here on the podcast. But one thing that I know after 15 plus years as a college professor and coach is that we can't get everything from a book or even from all the amazing resources that we have access to out there. We all need one-on-one guidance because the resources are just 10% of the overall strategy that we need to have for growth in our business. The other 90% is at least 90% mindset. If you are listening today and you're realizing that you are ready to take the next steps in your business and get that one-on-one customized, tailored help with building your digital course creation business, let's have a chat. Send me a DM at Digital Course Creator Guide on either Instagram or Facebook. And yes, I really mean it. I do check every message that I receive and I respond personally. Now, I know that not everyone is ready for one-on-one coaching or mentoring, but you might still have questions. Maybe you need help getting unstuck or just plotting out your next step. I'm here for that as well because we all deserve to have support in our business. If you need a little bit of extra support right now, I hold at least 2 slots each week open for these strategy calls that are designed to help you get unstuck and take action in your business. These are free, no obligation calls, and you can schedule your call at coursecalls.com. If you are ready to make the next 12 months the year that you go from being an uncertain course creator to a 6-figure course creator, schedule a strategy call today. Again, the link to schedule is coursecalls.com. I'll also pop that link in the show notes for you to make it easy. Now, speaking of creating a solid strategy in your business, I promised you the strategic key piece of the StoryBrand framework that will create magnetic messaging for your potential clients, and that is the problem section of the framework. When a client knows that you understand what they're feeling, what they're doing isn't working, and you can even identify the bigger picture issues that are causing them pain right now, you start to gain their trust. They sit up and they lean in. You're taking the time to understand what they're going through, and that is what makes the StoryBrand framework so powerful. Our messaging becomes magnetic when our potential client stands up and says, "That's me. How did you know?" So be sure to spend extra time on the problems section of the StoryBrand framework as you're working through your messaging. And if you want more quick solutions for building a successful digital course business and creating magnetic messaging, hit follow now